For me to become a prophet, Brother Nashi, what happened is that I was then taken to this other older lady by this man who had told me that back in his village he knew that there was this other woman who could assist me. So I then went to his place. After staying with him, then we went and we visited that older lady. This older lady, who was a traditional healer, the way that she would heal people was that she will mix Christianity and African spiritualism. When we arrived there, I was so ready to do whatever that was going to be required from me so that I can hasten this spiritual gift that was hanging from the heavens. When we arrived there, I was told that me and that man who had went with me to that old lady's house, we were both supposed to go around the village. When we would be walking around the village, we will be searching for a grave that we were going to use for this ritual. So me and that man, we then started walking around the village as if we were just looking around, but in secret we were in search of a grave that we were going to use for that ritual later on in the evening. So as we were walking around the village, that was when we came across this grave. This grave, my brother, that we came across, it was just close to this other road, but it was just a dusty road, like one of those dusty roads that can be found in the villages. When we had found that grave, we saw that it was in quite a suitable place that was well hidden from people that will be walking around. And I saw that even if we were to perform all of those rituals on that grave, and there will be no one who would see us, because the grave was just close to one dusty village road, but it was well hidden. But as we were busy inspecting that grave, my brother, what happened is that we then saw that suddenly there was a snake. This snake, it just came out of nowhere, and immediately when we saw the snake, we both recognized this snake to be a black mamba. And us knowing that a black mamba is quite a very dangerous snake, we were stuck and we didn't know what to do. At that time, Brother Nashi, running away was not even an option, because it was during the season when the grass was very long, so we could not see where exactly we will be stepping our feet on. So that snake, my brother, to our surprise, as poisonous as a black mamba is, the black mamba never attacked us. It kept on looking at us as if it was wondering what we were doing at that grave. After that snake had looked at us for a very long time, that black mamba then started climbing up the tree that was just close to that grave where we were staying. The moment that the snake went up the tree, we all ran away like no man's business without ever looking back. We ran until we reached that old lady's house. When we had reached that old lady's house, that was when that man who had accompanied me to go and visit that traditional healer started explaining to that older lady everything that had happened. And we told her that we had seen a black mamba that was just there close to that grave, which we had chosen for our ritual that we were supposed to perform later in the evening. So as that man that had accompanied me to go and visit that traditional healer was explaining, that was when that older lady started laughing, and I wondered why she was laughing at us. But then she said we were not supposed to be afraid in the first place, because she was the black mamba. She was that same snake that we had seen that was on top of that grave that we had chosen. She then said that she had the powers to transform herself into any kind of an animal that she wanted, depending on the environment and the situation. When the evening came, that was when that older lady gave us an instruction on the things that we were supposed to do. Then we left her homestead. When we left her homestead, she had told us to take some of her assistant with us back to that grave so that we can go and do the rituals there. When we had arrived at that stranger's grave, Brother Nashi, we then saw that on top of that same grave there was a very big snake that was coiled around that same grave. Instead of those men running away, they told us that we were not supposed to be afraid. Then they started singing. I wondered why they were singing, because the snake that we were looking at was quite a very big snake, such that we were not supposed to stand around and to see what the snake was going to do to us. Those men then told us that the snake that we were looking at, it was that same traditional healer, that older lady that we had left in her homestead. Whilst we were standing at that stranger's grave, I was then given an instruction. The instruction that was given to me was that I had to dig up that grave, but by digging up this grave, I was not supposed to use any digging tools when I'll be digging up that stranger's grave. So I then picked up a rock that was just lying close to that grave. Then I started digging up that stranger's grave. So on top of that stranger's grave, there was an anthill that had already covered the entire grave, because it seemed as if the relatives of the deceased, after they had buried their loved one, they had never returned back to that grave so as to check up on the grave of their deceased. So I was told that the soil that we wanted, it was not the soil that was on top of the anthill, but they wanted me to take the soil that had been left behind by the relatives of the deceased. That was the soil that could work in the rituals that were supposed to be performed upon my life. So I kept on digging in the night with that rock that I had picked up until finally I had reached another layer. And the second layer that we had reached, we then saw that the soil was quite different from the anthill that had covered that grave. Then I was instructed on how to take that soil. At that time, my brother, when I had gone to consult with that traditional healer, I was wearing this other short. It was a 3/4 short. You know those 3/4 shorts that have large pockets. So I filled all of those pockets with soil that I had gathered from that grave. Then we returned. More rituals were performed on me, and I was told that I was now powerful enough to go and start my own church. The way that I was supposed to do it, by the time that I would have started my own church, I was told that when I would have returned back to my village, I had to walk around the nearby bushes in my village looking for a perfect spot where I wanted to start my own church. After I had found that perfect spot where I wanted to start my church, what I had to do is that I had to dig up sort of like a grave in the middle of that place where I had chosen to be a spot for my church. So one day, my brother, I then went into the bushes and I looked around for a perfect spot where I wanted to start my church. Then I started digging.